Right, so a couple of weeks back, Phil Morisson from Driftworks asked me if I'd be interested in doing a bit of a custom project, creating some equal length long tube headers for his 992 GT3, and obviously the answer is yes, which is why the car's here. And I've kind of got started on it already. We've got the cats stripped off. As you can see, the actual flange into the back box is huge. They're getting bigger and bigger, these kinds of V-band flanges. Like GR Yaris, BMW M140 also have a huge V-band flange which goes directly onto the turbo. But that's because they're going straight off into the OPF filter, and they're making the OPFs bigger and bigger. Obviously, because of the high horsepower, there needs to be a larger surface area to deal with the amount of gas that the engine's just chucking out. So yeah, that V-band is huge. It's over 8 inches in diameter. But yeah, we're going to try and keep the cat as close to the back box as we can. Again, we're trying to create as much room for primary length as possible. So we've got to keep everything as far to the back of the car as we possibly can. So we're going to be taking advantage of this heat shielding and keeping the cat as far over and tight to the side as we can. Phil's not too worried about like the heat side of things to some extent. Obviously, we've got to be careful of obviously that the tyre is here. Heat won't be too much of a problem, not any more than the kind of original ones are anyway. We're actually going to be getting rid of a load of heat because we're going to get rid of the OPF, and that's where a lot of the heat is stored. In some respects, these will run cooler, but might just run slightly closer to you know, things than you would probably like. But yeah, the plan is to try and go from these ports, which are huge, by the way. Like, these ports are massive. There's obviously a reason these engines are so powerful. But yeah, they took out a lot of gas. Yeah, so we've got to try and get from those primaries there to the cat, which is going to be hanging out in the back box there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw up that V-band flange. And then what I'll do is I'll also draw up like a transitional cone which goes between the V-band flange and the cat that we're going to use. I'll show you the cats. They're just hanging out on top of the Princess here. So we've got these cats from HJS. These are like super high quality. Yeah, these are about as much money as you can spend in cats, really. So yeah, we've got to get from these to the back box flange in there. So yeah, I'm going to draw that up along with like a transitional flange, and then we'll have something interesting to look at, hopefully. I've been using the Ice Engine Works kit and some 3D printing, and been going through the kind of process of printing some head flanges, printing the flanges that go onto the kind of rear exhaust section, sorry, and then just kind of using the Ice Engine Works to come up with a few designs and see what we can make given the space we've got. Obviously, it's a rear engine car, which means that space is always a bit difficult anyway, but I think the design I've come up with is going to be pretty cool. It's going to be very unique. There's definitely no other 992 GT3 like this. Right, so I've drawn up this flange and printed it out. And I've also got like a transitional cone on it as well. So I've tried to do a really small cone. It's quite hard to see because it's black. But yeah, that flange aspect kind of stops here, and then I've got this cone which is attached to it. I'll probably be able to show you better on the CAD model. But yeah, like that cone then brings out from the flange to the cat, and then what I've done is also printed another cone which is slightly less extreme, and then like glued that on the top, and that is kind of how that piece is going to work, I think. So what I'm going to do now is put this up on the car, see what it looks like, and hopefully I don't need to change it because that's a pretty mega print. Yeah, the idea of using such an extreme cone is just to try and keep the cat as close to the side of the car as we can. We want to gain absolutely maximum space for header primaries. Again, like if you can gain 1 inch or 2 inches by keeping that cat really tight over to the side, that's obviously going to be beneficial. I know we're going to be able to get these a lot longer than any of the other kind of off-the-shelf aftermarket options, but again, it's like if we can gain 1 inch here, then yeah, it's going to be worth doing. So that seems to fit on there nicely, which is good. Means my drawing was accurate. Not a particularly difficult thing to draw, but yeah, easy to make a mistake. And yeah, that is more or less where that is going to land. So next step really is getting a collector cut, and then again probably using Ice Engine Works to decide where we're going to put this collector. And once we've got that collector in a fixed position, we can then begin to work out the primaries. I also need to draw the cylinder head flanges and then get those printed as well, so that we can have like a test flange that I can begin to clip the Ice Engine Works into. So yeah, see you in a couple of hours. Right, so I've got some head flanges printed. So we're probably going to do these from just a normal laser cut blank, e.g. just a piece of plate basically that's been laser cut. But I've actually printed the transition into the flange to go from the oval port size to the diameter of the tube we're going to be using, which is 2 inch. And I've done that because it's going to allow me to start prototyping a bit quicker. Like, I don't have the laser cut blank, so I can't weld a piece of steel to it, so I can't plan out where the primaries are going to go. But one advantage of doing this is I can print the flange in such a way that the Ice Engine Works blocks can just clip into it. So there we go. That totally speeds up the manufacturing process, and that's the same for any car. Yeah, any manifold you make, you can actually in your model print the flange with the ability to just clip the blocks into it. The block kits do come with like an adapter, but it doesn't always work depending on, again, this is an oval port, so it just wouldn't work. Yeah, that's one advantage of doing it this way. If you're going to make custom exhausts or something random, the ability to actually just test a flange before you got them cut is invaluable. So yeah, I've got 3 of these, so I'm going to get these bolted up to the engine now. So yeah, like I've got these, obviously, these 3 cylinder head flanges all bolted onto the car. So next up really it's going to be getting a collector made. I'll have to make a stainless one. I will just make like a prototype one to start with, because it'll end up getting banged around and scratched up and stuff. So it won't be like polished tube or anything. I'll make a collector as like a prototype. I might even have one that might be suitable. And then we can look at where that's going to go and then think about how the primaries are actually going to start to come together. That's when the fun stuff starts. The kind of design brief was it's got to be equal length, and we've got to make the headers as long as we possibly can. The idea being that the longer they are, the kind of more of an exotic sound will get out of them. You know, that's kind of really where the cool noise comes from. It's from having those really long primaries. Right, so I've made a collector up. It's not fully welded, but it'll do. And I've actually cut it and transitioned it into a 3 inch round, because that's the outlet on the cap, or the inlet, sorry. And then I've also got some Ice Engine Works 3 inch blocks. These are a 1D radius block. And I think it's gonna go something like this. Try and show you, might have to do it from a couple of angles. But yeah, the idea is that's going to go something like that. So we've got we've got enough clearance here on the heat shield, and then coming further around, we've got a good gap between the actual collector and the tyre there. And I think that is about as far away as I can get the collector from the primaries, and that's going to allow us to have like the longest possible headers going back that way. So by giving ourselves the collector at this angle here, we'll be able to really sweep the primaries round. Like this rear one is going to go right to the back of the car and forward again, or sorry, right to the front of the car and forward again, something like that. Might be able to see. Yeah, so this front one here is going to kind of come under, go into the suspension arm area and then back into the collector. And then this front one, rear one, sorry, it's really confusing when you work under a car because you lose all your bearings. Yeah, so we're going to try and make these as long and as sweeping as possible. So that's kind of what I'm going to do now, really, is just start having a play around with clipping bits of tube together, clipping blocks together, and seeing what we come up with. Here's one I prepared earlier. So there we go, we got one that now starts at the cylinder head, kind of winds its way around. It is just about clear of the suspension arm there. You've got a better angle than me, actually. Yeah, it's just about clear of the suspension arm, should be okay. Again, these are things that we'll refine as we begin to work in the metal. But yeah, like that one there has come out pretty well. So then when you want to go equal length, it is literally just a case of count the blocks, because they're all an inch long. That's the beauty of these, of the header kits, is that they're all an inch long. So you just go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 blocks. So we've got 18-inch primaries, which is pretty long given the space we've got to work with. And I could probably make it a little bit longer yet, but what I'm going to do before I get carried away is I'm going to kind of map out the other two and, you know, see what kind of shape we can create. Looks pretty sick. Right, so this is what I've come up with as like a first draft, really. I'll try and keep my head out of the way. This rear one, or front one, Adam, sort yourself out. It's the front of the car. I'm underneath it. Front one, 18 inches long. Middle one, 20. And then the rear one is 21 inches long. So we're close, but not close enough. We've got to add 3 inches into this rear one, an inch into this front one, or a combination of, you know, like removing an inch out of here, you know, and then just 1 inch and then 2 inches. But yeah, as a first draft, this now lets me kind of spend some time under the car just looking at it, visualizing what space I've got left. I also need to try the diffuser back on because there's a flat floor section that goes under here, and see what space we've got with that on, and just go from there. You'll notice that I'm using some orange blocks. So the yellow kit is a 2-inch diameter kit. So that is this size basically. But what you don't get in the 2-inch kit is a tighter radius block. So the 2-inch kit, the smallest radius is 3-inch radius, which is quite a big radius really. It is and it isn't, it depends. But this is so tight in some aspects that I need a smaller radius. So smaller radius is generally 2-inch radius, because you can't go any smaller radius than the diameter. So the smallest radius you'll ever get with a 2-inch diameter is a 2-inch centerline radius. Luckily, in the 1 7/8 kits and the 1 3/4 kits, they do come with a 2-inch centerline radius block. Again, they're 1 inch long, so you can just use these interchangeably in the kits. You just have to bear in mind that there's not enough diameter there, but it does work the same. It's just another way of doing it, I guess. You can just combine the kits to make what you need. I just obviously need to bear in mind that these orange blocks aren't as big in diameter as they will be when I make it out of steel, so I need to make sure there's enough room. But yeah, I'm now going to spend like 5-10 minutes with a brew just looking underneath the car and seeing what areas I've got to exploit. I mean, I'm not even just looking, can I get another inch or so into these rear ones, front ones? Can I actually make them all 5 inches longer? You know, is there space somewhere where I can get that? So yeah, I'm going to have a look, probably pop the diffuser back up and see what I can come up with. And then just like that, what do you know? Another version. So I decided to have a go at trying to bring that front primary kind of backwards to match the others. Obviously I had the vision originally of it going forward into the kind of suspension arm area, and then sometimes you get a bit stuck in that particular vision, and when I'd done it, it looked odd with two going backwards and like one going forward. So I've changed it up, and to be honest, I think that looks a ton better. I'm just kind of obviously a little bit mindful that we're not really there yet in terms of like clearances on everything. There's a few things that have got to move, but overall it's not too bad, you know. Like, this is coming out better than I thought, and sometimes you just cannot, until you actually start to do something, you cannot really imagine what problems you'll have. And that's the beauty of the Ice Engine Works and 3D printing and things like that. You can just get on with the job, and you know, like in a day or a couple of days now, I've gone from having nothing on the car to drawn, printed, tested, and then just messing around with the Ice Engine Works blocks. And again, yeah, I mean, I sound like an Ice Engine Works salesman, which I am, but to me, I could not have done this job in that, you know, in that period of time without the Ice Engine Works blocks. But yeah, I'm really happy with how that's worked out. So I'll drop Phil some pictures and see what he thinks. See if he's got any suggestions. Again, sometimes you just need like another opinion on stuff, and he's obviously fabricated things for his own cars before, so it's cool to get a second opinion. But yeah, I think this is coming out pretty well. I'm excited to do the other side now. We've got the V-band flanges that have been machined. We've had to wait a while for those, obviously, as with most kind of custom machined parts. Got the collectors made up and some kind of custom rolled cones to transition between these huge V-band flanges and the cat section. And then I'm also now adding the collectors on the end. I'm going to be using some double slip joints, and then yeah, just adding the primaries in between to create these kind of awesome long tube headers. Right, so we've got these machine flanges in now. These massive V-bands for the stock rear silencer on this GT3. They are huge. Check out the size of that. Cool, so looks right. Obviously we'll check it on the car in a minute, but the main challenge now is we've got to go from that to this, which is the cat. So obviously that is much bigger, and we're obviously doing it on a cone. So that's like the first bit we've got to try and create now, is like a cone shape to go from this flange to this cat. What I'm going to do is, rather than like working with this cat, I'm going to cut a piece of tube which is the same length and same diameter to use as like a dummy cat, just that I'm not like bashing this around the workshop, because obviously they're super expensive. So I'll cut that now, and then yeah, I'll look about how I'm going to try and create this reducing cone, or like a centric reducing cone. I'm probably going to do it in two pieces, but I'll cut this tube and then we'll have a look. Obviously end up leaving this long when I cut it out of stainless to allow me to trim it back. I've also no idea how hard this is going to be to roll yet. Got a really small set of rolls, which should hopefully make it easier, but that is what we're looking to try and make. So we've got a 3D piece now. The beauty of using the tape is that it kind of always wants to go back to how it was, because it was formed around that 3D piece. But yeah, we want something like that, and then that cat is going to sit just there. So that will be on there like that, and that cat will go there. So So yeah, this is the first bit we need to make. I'm not going to worry about the other cone until I've done this one, because again, depending on how accurate this one comes out, I might end up having to change the design of that one slightly anyway. So yeah, I'm going to transfer this now onto a piece of stainless, draw around it, cut it out, and then try and roll it. Yeah, I'm just going to almost push it through by hand, because this is only 1.2 mil stainless, so it's pretty thin. But yeah, you can kind of already see that just passing it through there twice, I've kind of got a bit of a cone. The trick, really, with this is just to not go too quickly. Obviously you can kind of unbend it, and that's what I was kind of expecting, that I would have one which would be a bit of a tester that would end up unbending a few times, and then I would do another one which would be like the final version. But again, it's getting there. You can see it's kind of coming together. Right, now I've got two. So it's basically going to be the same again for the cone on the other end. It's a massively different pattern, and again, I'm pessimistic that we're going to be able to make this in one piece. We might have to cut this in two to do it, but I'll have a go. You know, I didn't think we'd be able to do that one, but this one's even more extreme. I mean, obviously you can see how different these are just from the patterns. That one requires a much kind of gentler roll, and this one's going to be much more extreme. You know, it's going to be kind of like that. So we'll see how we get on. Again, this is fully eccentric as well. Obviously, like one end is basically straight. You can see that really. But yeah, so I'll get one cut out and see how we go. Got that to be perfectly round now, just needs flattening off a little bit. To be honest, I'll probably do that once it's fully welded. So there we go, same again now. Yeah, pretty happy with how that come out. So I've now got the cat section, or the cat piece, completely welded, and I've got the collector tacked on the end of it at the angle that I think it needs to be at. And I've readjusted the primaries again for like maybe the 6 millionth time, but that's kind of part of the process for these kinds of things. You're never going to get it right first time, and it is going to take many revisions. Like, this obviously would be so much simpler if we weren't trying to make the primaries super long, but we are, and that's just the brief really. And the challenge is the fun. You know, I could have done this already if it was super simple, but you know, we're making it more difficult, and that's where the fun is, because the fun is in the challenge. You know, I don't really get off on doing the same jobs over and over again. You know, I enjoy doing this kind of thing. Right, so this is kind of revision number 678 now, I think, but I'm happy with that. So what I need to do now is weld up this joint on the collector here, so that I don't get any movement. Obviously, every weld, you will get a small amount of movement. It might not be much, but it will move. And I can't afford to mock up all of these primaries in stainless and then have that move when I weld it. So I need to weld that first, and then it's a case of starting to cut up tube. I'll do one primary at a time, and I will probably start with this kind of like number one, this one that's most hidden behind the back here. I'll start with that one, and then yeah, I'll move forward and see where we get to. Right, so the next step is creating this head flange piece. Of course, I 3D printed this, not knowing if we were going to get it machined from like one piece as a billet, or if we were going to do like a laser cut flange. So we've decided to go down the laser cut route, primarily just because of time, but also because really there's no benefit to having this as a one-piece machined item. There's 6 of them. It gets crazy expensive, especially when you're talking about like relatively low volume machining something like that, and really creating this from stainless. There's no benefit at all. So what I've got is I've cut some pieces of tube. What I'm going to do is I'm going to actually do a bit of a tester to see if this is going to work the way I think before I go ahead and do all 6. So one I prepared earlier. I've squashed a bit of tube down into an oval, which drops kind of nicely over there. I need to flatten it off, because obviously as you begin to oval this out, it tends to become a bit not very level. So what I'll do is I'll level this out. I'll get it welded onto one of these spare flanges, because I've got a load of flanges cut. I'll get it welded on, and then I'm going to try and make this round again, basically, just by swaging it out. I've got 2 options. I can like drive a cone into it, or I can try and stretch it round. We'll see basically what happens, which one works best. So I did a tester, and when I went to swage it back out, it kind of it like warped the flange, and can't really see on there, but yeah, that's useless. Can't use that. So it's obvious when I've done it, and it's because I'm using really thin steel on the head flanges. This is 6mm, which is pretty thin for a head flange, but that's basically the same as what Porsche have used, and I've got to keep it the same because there's loads of science involved in just head flange thickness in terms of like cylinder head temperatures. Even if you forget all that, the stud length suits 6mm head flanges, so that's what we're using. So what I did was I did another one and left it actually bolted to my heatsink. So it was like bolted to my heatsink, and then I stretched it back out round again. And I always go a little bit bigger, and it's because, like, as you oval it, you've got to go bigger to get it back nicely round again. But that worked. It obviously warped it a little bit, but well within tolerance. So I was able to just sand it flat, on the linishing machine, and then obviously that will then take this edge out of round, so it'll be kind of like that. So then it's a case of sanding that top edge again, and then it's perfect for a piece of tube to go on it. So that is now perfect to use basically. I've just got to sand out the inside, get that all nice and smooth. But to be honest, I'll probably leave that until we've actually got a primary welded onto it. So just need to do that 5 more times now. Right, so that's 6 of these all done, all ported out. Got them nicely backed around again. I'm going to get one of these bolted up and get those first few tubes cut for that number 1 primary and see where we get to. Again, we should actually be able to use another set of tack clamps on here. We might struggle because of course it's a really short oval to round transition. Yeah, I'm going to weld these 2 joints here because obviously each weld there'll be again a slight amount of movement, so I'm going to get them welded and then move on to the next piece basically. Right, so that's the first one that's like tacked to the head flange and then kind of mounted on the car. So I'm now just kind of checking all the clearances on everywhere where we need clearance. Well, that's basically everywhere. It obviously can't be touching, but we got it. You know, it looks good. It's as a first step, it looks pretty good. It's getting there. So next piece now is working on this bit here. So there's obviously this looks like one bend, but it's kind of compound rotated. So there's actually 3 bends here. Obviously we've got to keep them all the same length. We can't deviate from what the kind of Ice Engine Works model is, because that's how we get the equal length. So that's the next job, cutting up some more bends to match these. This should be a little bit more simple now because we've got 2 fixed ends, which obviously aren't very far away from each other. So yeah, I'll get some bends cut up and then we'll try them on the car. Right, so I've now got 1 primary fully welded, and that's like welded in the middle joint and everything, and got it to line up perfect. Now, as I suspected, you do have to take the cat off every time to get these primaries in and out. So, of course, it's a little bit awkward with the first one, but it's going to get more and more awkward each time. Obviously, until we've got 3, and then it's going to be a case of having to remove the whole thing every time. So, yeah, this one is, I'm kind of going to build this one in 4. And to be honest, this one's still easier than what will be the front primary. The front primary has got a lot of joins in it, so yeah, let's get this one cut up. Right, so that's got that second one in. Now this one really is the most complicated one because it has to fit directly into the cutout of the diffuser. And if I split that second primary into 2, this one's probably going to get split into 5 or 6 different pieces maybe. So yeah, I'm going to get this bit made first, which is going to be some more mandrel bends on the bender again. This bit's fairly simple, to be honest, although it is going to be 3 separate pieces. This bit's relatively easy. But yeah, if I get this bit lined up with the diffuser, that's like the tolerance critical bit out of the way first. Right, so I've now got a manifold on both sides. In hindsight, I should have started with this side because of the offset banks. That means that these cylinders are further back, which actually gives me less space to get in the length of tube required, because the cylinders are closer to the cat. So obviously the primaries kind of come out from the engine and they go forward and then back again towards the cat. And because that whole area is more compact, it's just given me less room to do that. But I've managed it. The front cylinder has gone kind of into the wheel well area, into the kind of suspension arm area, which is not really a problem as such. I probably wouldn't have chosen to do it that way had I, in hindsight, started on this side, because I would have preferred them to all go back and then forward again, just for aesthetic reasons. There's no performance benefit, really. I mean, the whole idea of this, of kind of this project wasn't about gaining performance. It was about, you know, getting that distinctive equal length sound. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with it. Phil's coming to collect the car tomorrow, so probably the next clip will be with the car started up. I can hear it from here. Oh my god, that's loud. So hopefully this has been interesting and I've done a good enough job of filming it all. I'd definitely say make sure you follow the Driftworks channel if you don't already, because they do some really cool wild things. Phil's always doing something crazy with one of his cars. All of the components I'm using, or the majority of them, are available from Fabco store. Obviously some of them are custom created that we've had machined or whatever for this specific product. But if you need anything different, don't forget to give us an email. Make sure you're subscribed, and thanks for watching.